I'm Kayte Lewis from Voice Lawyers, and this is Voice in the Crowd, the podcast for people, not lawyers. It's about demystifying the law, speaking in plain English, and sharing practical insights into how the legal system really works in everyday life. Each episode draws on real stories and experiences, the good, the bad, and the confusing. If you feel overwhelmed or confused by the law, or you're just interested in our stories, this podcast is for you. Voice in the Crowd, where the law meets real people.
Hello and welcome back to Voice in the Crowd. Today I have special guest Jack O'Donnell with me, who is one of the founders of JustFund. Jack was a lawyer in Sydney and then moved off into legal tech before he met his business partner Andy, who was also from legal finance, and together they put together the business JustFund, which is a business which funds family law litigants to be able to bring applications. So I'm very excited to have Jack here today. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Kate. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We're very excited that you're here to talk about this because this is a really important aspect of our family law practice. And I know many, many other family law practices now across Australia. You only started JustFund in 2022, but you've had quite the rise of success, I think, haven't you?
It's been a busy few years since we started. I think you're right. I think it does impact, obviously not just thousands of family lawyers and practices, but hundreds of thousands of Australians who are going through a separation. I think, as we know, separation and divorce probably impacts up to about 40% of all marriages. And so you think about the knock-on effects of separation, impacts to children, family members, friends. Yeah, this is a huge problem. And before we launched JustFund, we really didn't think there were really good options for people to be able to go out there and actually engage good lawyers and achieve really fair outcomes.
So what made you start JustFund? I mean, you're a fairly young lawyer and working in Sydney. What on earth made you think that I'll go and start a family law litigation funding company?
Yeah, it's a little bit random and a little bit niche, as people often say. Interesting. So when I was about 21, I was working as a paralegal in a family law firm in Sydney. And during lunchtimes, I would sit on the reception desk and answer phone calls. And every day I would receive phone calls from prospective clients ringing up, asking about whether this law firm offered legal aid, whether they offered any sort of payment plan options, pay at end, deferred fee arrangements. And I vividly remembered every time going to my principal and asking her, was there any flexibility? Could we help these people? And she's an amazing lawyer. She does so much for the community. Her response was, Jack, I would love to be able to help these people, but I just can't. I've got a small business to run, mouths to feed, employees to pay. And so, yeah, maybe it was because I was only 21 that I looked at that and thought, oh, this seems like it's a bit odd that there's no options for people. Sort of immediately from that point, had a deep interest in looking at legal finance options as a way of improving access to justice and improving the family law system.
Because there is a really big gap, and I think this is something that until people come to this situation, there's a big gap between legal aid and having a private lawyer. Obviously, that's where you're able to bridge the gap somewhat for many people. Not everybody, we understand, but
Yeah.
For some people. And also, so you met Andy, he was in legal finance, and you also have another partner, Craig, and he has
That's
an interesting story too, which I think is important to understand because it's part of understanding the motivation for this whole company, which is great.
Yeah, so that's right. So I was a lawyer originally. So was Andy. The difference was that Andy left private practice, left his law firm and went to work in legal finance. So Andy and I founded the business together in 2022. At that time, we then met Craig. Craig was our kind of first believer. Craig is a successful entrepreneur. He's someone who has had to support friends and family through separation financially. And so I think came to understand very much the problem that we were trying to solve and was really passionate about our mission. And so together, the three of us started JustFund, and the three of us kind of still work closely in the business as employees today, although we've now got a much larger team, thankfully, which made things a bit easier.
How big is the team now?
So we got more than 50 staff. Yeah.
Goodness. That's quite a big growth curve from 2022. So obviously what that shows is that there is a huge need
Precisely.
out there. And I mean, that's what we feel. Our phone rings all the time with people asking for pro bono legal aid. And I am on the legal aid panel, but I can take this many people on legal aid because they actually cost us. It is pro bono to do legal aid because the amount of extra fees that you don't get paid for.
Can I say I've always respected the fact that you I know you're on the legal aid panel, and I speak to, sadly, kind of fewer and fewer lawyers who are these days, and I think precisely for that reason, because structurally it doesn't quite work.
No.
You mentioned before about maybe the kind of chasm between legal aid and being able to afford a private lawyer, and we talk about the missing middle in Australia,
Yes.
which is effectively the missing. It's the majority of Australians who, if you own assets or if you have an income, you probably are ineligible for legal aid, subject to a few caveats there, and always worth inquiring. But most people are ineligible for legal aid, but that doesn't mean that you're able to afford a private solicitor. And so I think for that very reason, even we have been surprised by the scale of the challenge that people face in Australia. And I think that explains why we've had to employ a large team just to cater to the demand that's out there.
And that's also given rise to a large amount of people self-representing as well, which has its own issues. And so while people are self-representing and they have no other option, or if they don't come to someone like JustFund, what it does from our perspective as family law practitioners, it costs everybody more. So the fees end up going up, the time spins out. So things that would have been settled in a shorter period of time are taking a longer period of time because the court has to give extra discretion. And so it's actually causing a rise in family law fees. Not saying there's a great answer to that.
No, but you're right.
That's what's happening.
And I think the court views it the same way, that they know that it can, as you say, kind of really, really kind of clog the courts. It can cause significant delays, and that's ultimately not in anyone's interest.
So let's say we come to you, and obviously we have people that come through our firm because we have to be accredited, don't we?
That's right.
And what is it that you'll fund as part of JustFund?
Yeah, so I'll talk you through kind of how it works. So what we do is provide a flexible line of credit to someone going through a separation or divorce, and they can use that line of credit to pay for solicitors' fees, so that their family lawyers' fees. They can pay for disbursements. So disbursements are the kind of third-party costs, as you well know. So if you need to pay court fees, you might need to pay a mediator's fees. There are other associated costs, family reports,
psych reports.
Yep. Property valuations.
Yep.
We take a really broad view of those associated costs that we can also help people with. Once someone applies for funding with us, we'll assess whether they're eligible, and I can talk you through kind of how we assess someone's eligibility. But if they're approved, then a client, for example, one of your clients, you submit an invoice, or a family lawyer submits an invoice in the normal way, and the client just approves JustFund paying that invoice on the client's behalf. And so we'll pay those invoices, and then the client will pay nothing until they actually reach a resolution. They reach final settlement, at which point JustFund is repaid just out of the property settlement. So JustFund's repaid first, and then the balance, what remains, which is always the lion's share of what's going to the client, and the client receives that.
Yeah. And that obviously means that people can fund their family law situation. So there has been a rising trend over the past probably maybe 2-3 years, I think, of this nesting, which is a term that even the first time I heard it was like, what are we doing? And that's where people share the same family home and one of them moves out at a time. And so usually it's around the children staying in the house, and the other person moves out. So that's it can work for a little while, I think. But then more recently, and I think it's a sign of the economic times, what we're seeing is people living together separated but under one roof.
Yeah, that's right. And we've seen that as well. We actually recently commissioned a research paper at the end of last year in the lead up to Christmas. We surveyed through a third-party research company. We surveyed over 1,000 couples to understand the health of relationships. And what's fascinating, I think this speaks to the point that you're making. So 70% of Australians now believe that cost of living pressure is the number one reason why relationships break down.
Right.
And it's the number one cause of tension and conflict in a relationship. Now, that's extra challenging because if you're struggling to pay everyday bills, that's placing pressure on the relationship. But then it also means that, to your point, just moving out and renting another property actually becomes increasingly difficult. So I think you're right. I think we've seen a massive increase, and the data that we have supports that, a massive increase of the number of people who separate but remain living under the one roof.
Yeah.
And if there is conflict, if there is tension, it can maybe work for some couples for a certain amount of time. But I think you and I both know from our experiences that it can be really problematic as well.
Yeah, it's really problematic. And in many cases, I mean, you're separating because you don't get along. In many of these relationships, there's already domestic violence. And then you put the added pressure of that you've decided to separate. You were already having some sort of financial issues, and now you're separating, but you're still in the same house. So what you've effectively done is increase the pressure. And, we're seeing a lot more DV and a lot of, escalating situations that are really heartbreaking, some really awful scenarios happening in that space. And obviously, if you've decided to separate, then maybe you just need to move out and separate. And so, I guess that's why we need some sort of funding to help us do that. And there's been a bit of I know you guys can't help everybody, but you have introduced something to help perhaps people that have got a little bit lower income or equity, your Equity Assist program.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe just stepping you through how our eligibility works in kind of broad terms. So we can help Australians going through a separation. We assess someone's eligibility for a line of credit with JustFund, not based on their income or their credit score, which are those traditional kind of metrics that banks and other lenders look at. Instead, we leverage our background as lawyers. And at JustFund, we've got a number of in-house family lawyers that actually help us to really consider every applicant, consider their circumstances, and consider their legal entitlement to relationship property under the Family Law Act. And so what that means is that often, primary carers of children, people who maybe haven't worked for some time, people who only work part-time, are able to apply for funding, and we won't decline you or not approve you purely on the basis of a lack of income or a lack of a recent employment history. Importantly, we strive to help the greatest number of people that we possibly can. We can't help everyone, as you say, and the worst part of our job is turning people away, which we have to do from time to time. It can be heartbreaking at times, but what we are committed to is kind of broadening our eligibility criteria. So we've launched something recently called Equity Assist that now enables us to consider Australians who maybe have smaller property pools and who may be expecting to receive a bit less from their relationship settlement or property settlement. And so that's already proving really successful. So we've already approved 50 people in the last month under Equity Assist, and they were 50 people who we might otherwise have had to turn away. Yeah. So we're kind of committed to helping the greatest number of Australians that we can, and that'll increase over time as we come to learn more about the space and kind of take those learnings and provide more access.
Amazing. And that's often a safety issue too, really, isn't it? Like, people just need to be able to make the break and have that option of leaving. And so that's really what you're doing, is that you're helping people have that option. Yeah.
So every week people come to us and they say, I've only just heard about you through my family lawyer or through a friend. And they often say, I wish I'd known about you years ago, because these people often feel just very trapped in an unhealthy relationship. And that is obviously can be really, really problematic. So you're right. I think it is a safety issue. People feel trapped. People don't take the important step of separating because they have a fear of obviously the consequences if they might leave, but they also just have a fear practically of, they think, I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford, to rent my own property. Yeah. And so because of that, it's really important that people are aware of the options that are available to support them to move, to support them to get a good lawyer, to support them to achieve a fair outcome from their separation, and then kind of move on and embark on that next really important chapter of their lives.
And do you have any, I know you guys do a lot of research. Do you have any research around the different sort of outcomes that people get, whether they have a lawyer or whether they self-represent?
It's a really good question. So there's not a lot of data on the outcome that self-represented litigants get, but what we do have is the feedback that we get.
The stories
that we have. So, and it is absolutely the case, as we see it, that having a good lawyer in your corner is incredibly advantageous to you. To talk you through an example that we heard just in the last few weeks, a family lawyer we work with in Cronulla, in the south of Sydney, emailed us recently to say, the client and I just wanted to let you know the difference that having access to funds and being able to actually go to court had on this matter. And in that matter, it was a case where this family lawyer represented a mum of 2 children, and her former husband. They were of the view that he was hiding assets. And now that is quite a common tactic in family law, as you know.
I know, yes.
And often the only way to uncover those assets is with the support of maybe a good forensic accountant, having a good team around you, having experts, and that can cost you money.
Yeah, that's expensive when we have to do that. Yeah,
that's right. And also we can support someone even if you don't need to go to court, but sometimes people need to go to court to compel parties to provide information. And in that case, the ability for that client to engage good forensic accountants, a good family lawyer, and the need for them to go to court, they could only achieve with the support of a line of credit through JustFund. And that client ended up walking away with, many multiples more from her separation than she otherwise might have.
Yeah. I mean, we had ourselves, someone in the last 12 months with a similar situation where they were looking at walking away with nothing, and got 70+% of the pool. But boy, it cost a lot, and it was a big fight. It took a lot of resources to get there.
If I can just mention one more example, which
sure,
is probably just even the more common one than what I just mentioned, is someone comes to us and says, my former partner says that I'm worth nothing. I've been offered 30% and I've been told to walk away, and that's it. And again, I think with the support of a good legal team around you, the results that we see is someone comes to us saying, I'm about to accept an offer for 30% of the pool, and they end up receiving, between 50 and 60% of that pool. So in terms of the difference, I think that having a good legal team behind you can deliver for you. They're just some anecdotal examples that I can provide.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen with the people that we've been able to help as well through being funded, because you can only take on so many people on a pay at end basis, and fewer lawyers are doing that just because of the risks involved. And so, obviously it's great that to be able to do that, to be able to take clients on. You mentioned 2 things I want to come back to. One is you said income. We don't look at income now. I was speaking with another one of our podcast guests a few weeks ago, Louise Chu, and she was talking to us all about how banks look at income, and that can be really challenging for women that haven't worked for a while since they've had children, or perhaps have worked on a part-time basis. And if we want to, go back down the DV route, that often really affects women's ability to hold down stable employment. Now, you said that you don't look at income.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So if you look at the statistics of the clients that we support, 75% of the clients that we support and we provide funding to are the primary carers of children. Now, that doesn't mean they all don't work, but a lot of them will often only work part-time because they have that kind of primary carer duties, but also a lot of them will not work. A lot of them maybe have not been able to work as a result of, things that have happened recently in their past as well. And so banks, understandably, they're very used to doing the same thing for the last sort of 100 years. When they assess someone for a mortgage, all they're really looking at is how much money do you earn? What are your expenses every month? Can your income support you paying this loan, servicing this loan every month with interest and repaying at the end of the day? But we take a really different view, because someone going through a separation, they, as you said, it spans, people from all walks of life, all sorts of personal experiences, many of whom have been the primary carers of children, therefore just do not have the same, financial power as their former partner might have. And so it's really important that we look beyond those more traditional lending metrics and just focus on the individual, their legal entitlement. And it's really important that we leverage our legal skills and expertise to really get to know someone. And we can be quite confident, having assessed you, whether you're going to receive, enough at the end of the day from your property settlement to be able to repay JustFund, very comfortably. And the important thing for us is making sure that people walk away from this experience with the lion's share of their entitlement. That's what's fundamentally important to us.
Right. And the second thing that I want to come back to is you mentioned the credit score. And I just want to want to go into that for a little bit because that's really important. I think a lot of people, I mean, some people aren't aware that they have a credit score, but we all have a credit score, don't we?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we can find during family law situations and separations is that credit scores can be destroyed, particularly if someone stops paying the mortgage. And you said that you don't look at the credit score, but a bank will look at a credit score, won't it? For how long? How long do they look at it?
Well, I guess at the point in time when they're coming to us, a bank will look at your credit score at the point in time you're coming to be assessed, and a credit score will track, years and years of kind of, your financial history, whether you've taken out loans, credit cards, whether you've been on time in repaying those, how frequently you might have applied for other forms of credit. These are all things that go into giving you a credit score. What I'll say is really interestingly, you say everyone has a credit score, and that's right, most people do. It's a bit perverse, but if you actually say you haven't had responsibility for the finances, say you've never had a credit card, maybe you're not on the mortgage, those things will actually lead you to having a really poor credit score. Right. So you might be someone who, it's not that you've mismanaged your finances in the past. It just might be that you haven't actually had much involvement in it. And that can be a lot of people that are going through separation. So if you go to apply for a bank for a loan, you might find it challenging to obtain a loan because you might not have much of a financial history and your credit score might be lower as a result. So that's one thing, that's another reason why we don't look at credit score, because it's not, in our view, it's not relevant ultimately to what you're going to receive from your separation. But you raised the second point, which is someone might have an excellent credit score, but as a result of things that have occurred during the separation, it might be that one party in the relationship has stopped paying the mortgage. And if you're both on the mortgage and someone stops paying the mortgage, that's going to hinder you. You're going to miss payments. That's going to reduce your credit score. We also speak to a lot of people, especially women who have to flee a violent relationship, often flee with the kids, and they're often in a really tough situation. And they will be forced to apply for a whole bunch of different personal loans, buy now, pay later loans. And what people don't realize is, even the act of kind of applying for lots of personal loans over a short time, especially if you're not successful with those applications, that can actually impact your credit score as well. And this is, I think there's not enough awareness about maybe the importance of credit score, the importance of trying to maintain a good credit score and build up a credit score over time, especially if you find yourself in a situation where, you're relying on yourself to provide that financial security for yourself and your children. So for those reasons, we don't look at someone's credit score. It's not relevant to what you're going to receive from your property settlement. And so again, we just want to focus on what's relevant, and we want to help people, and being focused on income or credit score will more likely than not lead us to make the wrong decision about whether someone can be helped by us or not. Yeah,
that's a big thing to understand. And I think a credit score is often, whether it's actually credit score, but that whole financial abuse side of family law is very, very ugly. And, people wrecking someone else's credit so that they've got more control over them is often something that we do and it defies logic. It really does. But I had the same thing happen to myself some 15 years ago. It takes a long time to fix it.
A long time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it really does. And a concerted effort, but you have to understand that that's what's happening. So you've evolved. You've got some other things that you do though with JustFund, haven't you? You've got a couple of other little arms going on, and
well, I think we've now been operating. We're just starting our 5th year, which is really exciting. So we've now helped several thousand Australians going through a separation. We've helped them to unlock now close to $3 billion in property settlements, which is really a pretty amazing figure. And because we have now just spoken to so many people going through separation, it's so clear to us that being able to afford a family lawyer, it's just one of the many challenges people need to overcome when they're going through something that can be as uncertain as a divorce or separation. And so we're really committed to trying to provide as much support to our clients as possible. And we've always viewed ourselves as being more than just a lender. So we're building out in 2026 our kind of client care team. So we want to be able to provide really helpful resources to people going through a separation, not just help them with financial resources, but helping them with education and awareness. A lot of the things that you talked about being really important. Yeah. We think we're in a great position to be able to provide support to people going through this experience. A lot of our people call us asking us for our recommendations for family lawyers to use. And so we've launched a service recently called Find a Family Lawyer, which helps people to kind of just input a bit of information online and to be kind of to be matched with some potential family lawyers that could be suitable for them. And that's a national service. You know, you could be anywhere in Australia, and we can try and identify people who might be a good fit for you. So yeah, they're just some of the examples and some of the ways that we think we can just support practitioners, but also importantly their clients as well.
Well, that's amazing, because it's a big process after separation and divorce to go forward anyway. And obviously, you know, something that we're quite passionate about here is helping people rebuild, and particularly women, to understand a bit of financial literacy and to make good decisions. Like, we're often referring off to different financial people, because that means that, you know, they really do need that information in order to make good financial decisions. So that's excellent to hear.
Yeah, I think there's no shortage of, I'm keen to get your thoughts. There's no shortage of people out there who provide amazing support, and there's no shortage of information consistently. Like, you know, the clients that we speak to every day, I think they're probably understandably just a bit overwhelmed. And so what they're looking for is just really easy ways, simple ways to digest really important information, to be able to access helpful resources. And so I think we're just one access point for that information. And so I think the key is how can you actually deliver that information in a really helpful way? Because, you know, these people are going through so much, they're so overwhelmed, and they're often, you know, time poor as well. And so we're trying to think about creative ways to support more people.
Well, they're often under huge amounts of stress and change and financial pressure, and none of those things are conducive to making great decisions. So it really is important to have some good advice and to have some support around that.
Okay.
But it's so crucial, and I will go into. I actually met with somebody that I helped quite some time ago. I think it would have been back not long after I became a family lawyer. So, when was that? 2012. So back then sometime. And I met with her the other day, and it's been probably nearly 15 years since I helped her.
Wow.
And
nice that you're still in touch with them as well.
And she said to me, I was looking at my super balance the other day, Kate, and I just went, I wouldn't have had any of that if it wasn't for you. And she said, I just was so grateful. And, you know, I was able to go on and buy a house, and I've got, you know, a large amount of money in super, and I wouldn't have had any of that, but you wouldn't let me settle for less.
Wow.
And I can be a little bit like that, a little bit like a dog with a bone, but it was so nice to hear it come back after such a long time, and that somebody's still actually like grateful. It actually has been so life-changing for her and for her 4 children and grandchildren now, and so they're all in a better position. So it is able to bring that sort of major change into somebody's life.
Yeah, I think you're helping someone to think not just about the immediate, you know, consequences of structuring an agreement in a certain way, but I think what you can do is, because you're that little bit separated from it all, you can help someone think about the long-term implications.
So, Jack, what would be your best advice to somebody that's about to embark on separation or divorce?
I think some people approach separation and divorce as though it's a bit of a taboo topic. And I think people maybe don't feel like they can talk openly to friends and family about it. So I think the first thing I would say is just to recognize that, you know, anyone going through it, you know, that they are not alone in going through that, and that there are so many people out there who are willing to provide great help, support, advice. And I'm not just limiting that to family lawyers, you know, at all. I mean, just generally. Yeah. So I think it's important that people can talk about it, because this is something that, you know, hundreds of thousands of Australians go through every single year. That's the first thing I would just want to say. And then I think the second thing is, it is the importance of just having some good advisors around you. We've talked a bit about the benefits of having a good family lawyer, maybe having a good financial advisor, having a good even an accountant, someone who can help you to understand the kind of long-term implications of the decisions that you're going to make. It can be really important. And so I think I would just really emphasize the importance of reaching out to people. And there are a lot of great services out there and people you can have initial consultations with if you're unsure kind of who best to work with. So I think that's really important.
Great. And what should people look for in a family lawyer?
We've done a lot of thinking about this. I think so. We surveyed a lot of our clients now going back 18 months.
Right.
And we asked them what it is that they felt their family lawyers did really well. And overwhelmingly, it was family lawyers who they felt listened to them and heard them. So I think the importance of having an empathetic family lawyer, I think it's those soft skills that as you move through the process become really important, because hopefully people can get through a very amicable separation in a short amount of time. And so many do. But if for whatever reason the process takes some unexpected twists and turns, I think just having a family lawyer that you feel listens to you and takes the time and is empathetic and you feel cares about your situation is really important. But I'm not sure as a family lawyer whether you'd agree with that.
No, I do.
And I feel like I feel like that's your approach. So
that's what we call voice, and it's about, us giving people a voice. And so our tagline is, we hear you. So thank you. That's very, very good.
I didn't know that. So it probably sounds like it was a bit of a setup, but yeah,
No.
it genuinely wasn't. That's what matters to people.
Yeah. So if somebody's in the middle of their case and they're going, I'm running out of money, what do they do? What can they do?
Yeah. So, I mean, they can give us a call. So we've got a team based in Sydney who works with people going through separation all around Australia.
Yep.
And we're more than happy to answer a phone call and share a bit more about who we are and what we do and whether we can support you. If someone is unsure whether they're eligible for funding through JustFund, I'd encourage them to visit our website, justfund.com.au. They can check their eligibility on the website. So there's no need to contact us if they don't want to. They can check if they're eligible, and then they can apply for funding via our website if they feel like they're ready to.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks for talking to me today. And hopefully we can help a few more people.
Absolutely.
Over the next few years.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Let's do it.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Just before you leave, I have a quick but important note. What we've discussed in this podcast is general information only. It's not legal advice, and it's not a substitute for getting advice tailored to your specific situation. The law, and family law and employment law particularly, are highly fact-specific. Small details can make a big difference. So if something we talked about resonates with you, we encourage you to get proper advice before taking any action. Nothing in this podcast creates a lawyer-client relationship, but we're always happy to point you in the right direction. If there is something you'd like us to discuss, please reach out and let us know, and I hope you tune in next time.